For 30 years, one question has sat at the center of every negotiation, every sanctions package, every military threat, and every diplomatic collapse between Iran and the United States. Does Iran have a nuclear weapon? And if not, how close is it? The answer has never been simple, and the ambiguity, it turns out, has been entirely deliberate. Iran's nuclear program was born in cooperation with America. In 1957, under the Atoms for Peace Initiative, the United States and Iran signed a civilian nuclear cooperation agreement. The Shah wanted a modern state. Nuclear energy was what modern states had. Washington was happy to help. Iran was an ally. The agreement deepened the relationship, and civilian nuclear technology seemed a straightforward gift. By the time the Islamic Revolution came in 1979, Iran had a partially built nuclear infrastructure and a generation of engineers trained in its operation. The program went quiet during the chaos of the early revolutionary years and the war with Iraq. It reemerged in the late 1980s, funded partly by relationships with Pakistan's nuclear network and partly by purchases of equipment and materials through channels designed to avoid Western detection. By the mid-1990s, American and Israeli intelligence were raising serious alarms. Iran was enriching uranium. It was developing ballistic missiles capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. The gap between a civilian nuclear program and a weapons-capable program was narrowing. Tehran's position was consistent. Everything we are doing is legal under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which we have signed. We have the right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes. We are not building a bomb. Washington's position was equally consistent. We don't believe you. This argument, circular and unresolvable, conducted simultaneously through diplomatic channels and through sabotage, assassination, and military threat, would run for the next 3 decades. In 2002, an Iranian opposition group revealed the existence of 2 previously undisclosed nuclear facilities, an enrichment plant and a heavy water reactor. The International Atomic Energy Agency launched inspections. What they found confirmed that Iran had been conducting nuclear activities it had not declared. Iran acknowledged the facilities, but maintained that they were civilian in purpose. The crisis escalated. The European Union launched negotiations. The United States, under President George W. Bush, refused direct talks and listed Iran as part of an axis of evil alongside Iraq and North Korea. Then Iraq fell. The American invasion of 2003 removed Saddam Hussein, Iran's most dangerous regional enemy, and replaced the Iraqi government with one dominated by Shia parties with close ties to Tehran. The strategic outcome of America's war against one of Iran's enemies was the transformation of Iraq into a country aligned with Iran. Iran drew its own conclusion from what happened next in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi, facing international pressure, agreed in 2003 to abandon his weapons of mass destruction programs in exchange for normalized relations with the West. He gave up his program. 8 years later, NATO air power helped overthrow him, and he was killed by rebel forces. For the Iranian leadership, the lesson was direct. Countries that surrender their deterrent get destroyed. Countries that maintain ambiguity about nuclear capability survive. The nuclear file dominated the 2010s. In 2010, a sophisticated computer virus, later identified as a joint American and Israeli operation, destroyed approximately 1,000 Iranian uranium enrichment centrifuges at the Natanz facility. The attack, known as Stuxnet, set the Iranian program back by an estimated 1 to 2 years. It was the first publicly acknowledged case of a state using a cyber weapon to physically destroy another state's military infrastructure. Iranian nuclear scientists began dying in targeted killings, shot by motorcyclists in Tehran traffic, killed by magnetic bombs attached to their cars. Iran blamed Israel and America. Neither confirmed involvement publicly. The program continued. In 2013, a newly elected Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani, signaled willingness to negotiate. 2 years of intense diplomacy followed between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus Germany. In July of 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed. Under the agreement, Iran accepted strict limits on its nuclear program, reducing its enriched uranium stockpile, limiting the number of centrifuges, and accepting intrusive inspections. In exchange, most economic sanctions were lifted. Iran would re-enter the global economy. The possibility of a diplomatic path had opened. 3 years later, it closed. In May of 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the agreement unilaterally, calling it the worst deal ever negotiated. Sanctions were reimposed at maximum pressure, broader and stricter than anything that had come before. Companies doing business with Iran faced exclusion from the American financial system. Iranian oil exports collapsed. The currency lost most of its value. Inflation reached levels not seen in decades. Iran responded by systematically exceeding the limits set by the agreement, enriching uranium to higher levels, installing more advanced centrifuges, and reducing cooperation with international inspectors. By 2023, Iran had enriched uranium to 60% purity. Weapons grade is 90%. The gap that had existed when the agreement was signed had been almost entirely closed. While the nuclear file developed, Iran was building something else, a network. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, armed, trained, and funded by Iran, had become one of the most capable non-state military forces in the world, with a missile arsenal estimated in the hundreds of thousands. In Yemen, the Houthi movement received Iranian weapons and training and brought the most powerful Arab military coalition in the region to a grinding stalemate. In Iraq, Iranian-aligned militias operated alongside and sometimes in direct competition with the official Iraqi state. In Syria, Iranian forces and their proxies helped keep Bashar al-Assad's government in power through a decade of civil war. This network gave Iran something that no amount of sanctions could remove: the ability to create problems for its enemies at a time and place of its own choosing, without ever formally declaring war. An American drone is shot down over the Gulf. A Saudi oil facility is struck by missiles and drones. A container ship is seized in international waters. An Israeli-linked vessel is attacked. Each incident is ambiguous enough to be denied. Each incident is understood by everyone involved. For the United States and its allies, this is the core of the Iranian threat, not a direct military confrontation that conventional forces could address cleanly, but a permanent, low-grade pressure applied through proxies across 5 countries simultaneously. And behind all of it, the question of the bomb. The geography of the conflict has one choke point that makes everything else real. The Strait of Hormuz a narrow passage between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, carries approximately 30% of the world's seaborne oil on any given day. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq. The oil from all of them passes through this strait on its way to India, China, Japan, and Europe. Iran sits on one side of it. American allies sit on the other. The ability to threaten that strait to signal credibly that Iran could close it or disrupt it is Iran's ultimate economic weapon. An Iranian military action in the strait would not primarily affect American consumers. American oil production has made the United States largely energy independent. It would affect China, India, Japan, and the European economies that import Gulf oil. It would cause a global price spike that would ripple through every economy on Earth. This is the reality that makes the conflict impossible to resolve through simple force. A military strike on Iranian nuclear facilities might delay the program. It would not eliminate Iran's conventional military, its missile arsenal, its proxy network, or its ability to threaten one of the world's most critical energy choke points. The day after a strike, all of those would still exist, and the political will in Iran to use them would be stronger than before. In 2025, the economic pressure inside Iran reached a breaking point. Inflation had been running at catastrophic levels for years. The currency had lost the overwhelming majority of its value since sanctions were reimposed. Unemployment among young Iranians was severe. Street protests erupted in cities across the country and were met with force. The death toll from the crackdowns was disputed, with estimates ranging from thousands to tens of thousands. The Iranian government blamed American sanctions for the economic suffering. American officials pointed to Iranian government corruption and mismanagement. Both things were true simultaneously. In Washington, the Trump administration declared openly that military options were on the table. The naval grouping deployed to the region was the largest since the Gulf War. Negotiations continued in parallel in Geneva, through intermediaries, through back channels. The gaps remained enormous. Iran would not abandon enrichment. America would not lift sanctions without verifiable proof that Iran had abandoned any path to a weapon. Neither side trusted the other's commitments. The history between them made trust almost structurally impossible. The story of Iran and America is, at its core, a story about what happens when the consequences of decisions made in 1953 compound across 7 decades. A coup that restored a Shah, a revolution that brought down that Shah, a hostage crisis that humiliated the most powerful country on earth, a war funded from both sides simultaneously, a nuclear deal built and destroyed within 3 years, a network of proxies that turned a regional rivalry into a permanent low-grade conflict spanning 5 countries. None of this was inevitable. At multiple points, different decisions could have produced different outcomes. The 1953 coup that never needed to happen, the 1979 revolution whose grievances were legitimate even when its government was not, the 2015 agreement that both sides allowed to collapse. What remains is a conflict with no clean resolution in sight. A country of 90 million people living under severe economic pressure, run by a government that has made opposition to America the foundation of its legitimacy for over 40 years. And a superpower that cannot simply walk away from a region that controls a third of the world's seaborne oil, that sits next to its closest ally in the Middle East, and that has, in its mountainside facilities, centrifuges spinning uranium closer to weapons grade than at any point in history. The naval fleet is in the water. The centrifuges are still spinning, and somewhere in the 7 decades of history between those two facts is the answer to the question everyone is asking. How did it come to this?